The old Swedes Historic Site, the home of this beautiful church that you see behind me, Holy Trinity Church. This is one of the oldest churches in the country and the oldest church in the state of Delaware. It was built by the Swedes and Finns who arrived here in 1638 to create a new colony in the New World. Under the auspices of Erik Bork, who was the priest from 1697 to 1714, a Lutheran pastor, this building was built along the sides of the graveyard that was begun here in 1638-39. In May of 1698, they laid the cornerstone for this church. The church is built from a Brandywine blue granite that was taken from the Brandywine River, brought down to the Christina, and then hauled up here to this site. The stonemason who built the building, Joseph Yard, was an artisan in Philadelphia. He brought a variety of his staff with him. He also hired a free African American, Dick, to mix the mortar. Dick was considered a master mortar maker in the time period. The roof and all the woodworking and the pulpit you will see inside was built by a family of carpenters named Harrison. You would have thought that a building such as this, it only took 1 year to go up, would have been done very easily, but by the time the first cornerstone was laid, they were on their second stonemason, and by the time the roof was put on, they were on their third carpenter. It wasn't as easy as you thought. It cost roughly 800 pounds sterling to build this building. You will notice that it has this on the east side is the gable end along the roof with a large window. That window was here at the time, but it was not stained glass. Let's go around and see some of the other changes and additions to the building. Here we are on the north side of the church, and you will notice it looks like we have some little rooms. They did not start out as rooms. The church was small, and it was just had one major door at the time with a few windows. But over time, inside, as we go in, you will notice there's a large barrel vaulted ceiling that was balanced on the sides of the building. As time went on, the building began to bulge out and the roof began to sag in. The way the parishioners and the congregation dealt with that was to add what they called buttresses to the exterior of the building. You can see along here the demarcation of the original buttresses that went up. Later in the 19th century, they took these buttresses, they filled them in to make different rooms to meet their needs. You will notice the window here, the stained glass window. It was put in, it was the very last one put in 1896 in memory of Erik Bork and his determination to build this building. Here we are on the south side of the church, which is the side that faced the river. When parishioners arrived here, they often came, docked their boats at the river, which was about a block downhill, walked up through the cemetery to this site. As you notice, there are also the buttresses on this side. They were put here in the 1760s as the south side of the church walls began to bulge. They were bulging originally for a while, but they felt they could get away with not fixing them. But when it looked like the roof was going to come down on their heads, they put them up. You will notice over on the other side of the buttress, there is initials and the date 1762. Those are the initials that the stonemason who put on these buttresses did it at that time. Also, you will see the front doors of the church, two double-sided wooden doors that have had many initials carved in it over the history of the church. Here we are at the bell tower. It's one of the most famous views of the church today. It was put on in 1802 and built by the brick mason Thomas Cole. Cole was a parishioner of the church and decided to help them out with a problem that they were having. At the time, the bell was on a little belfry and no one could hear it ring. They've hung it from trees, they put it on the roof, and it was just not sounding quite as well. So he helped put up this tower, and you can see it today, and the bell that's in the top of it. If you look above my head above the door, you will see some iron letters dating 1698. These letters were on the church when it was built. The 1698, the date it was begun, and they were on the west wall that we can no longer see. They were put there to commemorate the church itself by Eric Bohr. The letters and the verse that went with it commemorated the individuals involved in the building of this church. Eric Bohr as the priest, William Penn, who was the proprietor of the colony at the time, and the King of Sweden's name was included as well. And the verse, "If God could be for us, who can be against us?" On the other three walls, the north, the south, and the east, there was a Bible verse among each of them with iron letters. If you walk around the whole building, you will notice a few of them left. These iron letters were the only pieces made by a Swedish artisan on this building. Over here is the plaque commemorating this church and these burial grounds as a National Historic Landmark in 1961. Today, not only is it a National Historic Landmark, but the church and burial grounds are a unit of the First State National Historic Park. On December 24th, 1830, after the Christmas Eve service, Holy Trinity Church shuttered its doors and the congregation moved uptown. For close to 12 years, these doors were shuttered, but it was with the help of Henrietta Almond that they were opened again. The Almond family had worshipped at Old Swedes Holy Trinity for many, many years, and they are buried in several sections of the cemetery. But it was upon her death in 1841 that Henrietta left $700 to the vestrymen and the wardens of Old Swedes Church. It was to repair the church and to bring it up to date so that it could reopen for services. She left a caveat in her will that said if the work was not done within a year, the bequest should be refunded to her sister. Needless to say, the building was restored within the time limit and services were once again held in the building. Here we are inside this beautiful church. It is very peaceful in here, and you can see a couple of the things that have changed on the interior over the years. The first being the windows. If you look around, you will see stained glass windows. These windows were all casement windows when the church was built. Then they went to sash windows, and then the stained glass was put in between 1882 and 1896. The window to my left is a Tiffany window, one of his first commissions using opalescent glass for churches. It is the Bayard window, an important family in the history of this state. They were lawyers and senators and members of Grover Cleveland's cabinet and a suffragette. Interesting family. If you notice the lights, they are all electric today. But in 1892, the church went from using candles to having glass lights. The individual who was responsible for that was named William Forrest. Forrest has an interesting life, as he started as a child in the Hagley powder mills, not too far from here. His family immigrated here from Ireland. He grew up in the mills and even was a worker himself for a while. He became a philanthropist. He owned his own construction companies and 2 other businesses in town, and he gave to a lot of organizations. But he loved this building and this church dearly. He raised funds for it to help keep it up. There is a window commemorating his wife and the gas lighting that was put into here. The pulpit, as you will see, is original and is one of the oldest in the country, still in use today. Please join us for a tour when we are open after the COVID-19 pandemic and hear all the stories of the people such as the Bayards, the Forrests, William Keating, who was an explorer and founder of the Franklin Institute, Mary Vining, who was a belle of the Revolutionary War, and the lives of everyday people who lived in this town and this state and attended this church.